Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We hope that all is well with you. This is Suidlanders Week in Review, number 5, Friday, the 4th of November 2022. And in case something dramatic happens between the time that I record this video and the time that it takes to upload it, by the time that it's uploaded, the time now is just before 4 o'clock. I must do this video, obviously, but the thought sort of crossed my mind before I rejected it, that maybe I shouldn't do it because I'm so preoccupied by 2 videos that I've just watched late this afternoon. And I wish to urge you, all Suidlanders, please, if you are able to do so, listen to Mr. Miller's sermons, lectures, presentations, talks on Radio Groot Rivier in the mornings and evenings. There is inestimable value in them. And I've just watched 2 videos by Japie van Zyl, videos that I had seen previously, and I am still very, very taken aback by, astonished by, when looking back on how much of what we're going to discuss today in the week in review and things that Japie van Zyl has addressed and things that Mr. Miller is addressing intersect. I feel afraid I don't want to be too dramatic, but deep inside of me, I feel afraid when I recognize how much of this stuff is intersecting. Anyway, without further ado, this is the Week in Review, number 5, 4th of November, 2022. On the 2nd of October, just over a month ago, Brazil held elections. And the then incumbent president, when I say elections, general elections for their Senate, for their vice president, president, they have all sorts of different categories, the whole bang shoot. The then president, Jair Bolsonaro, was widely expected to win, hands down. The support for him was overwhelming. And there were good records made prior to the election. Somebody had the foresight to take comparable photographs of the attendance at his rallies versus the attendance at the rallies of his opponent, Lula da Silva. And it was chalk and cheese. Like chalk and cheese, you could not compare the two. The one had tens of thousands of people and the other skitzels, hands full. Well, somehow Lula da Silva won. And his success has been kind of vetted by international community and election monitors and so on. And over time, the people in Brazil, ordinary people, the voters, have become more and more frustrated by those results because they just seem not to make sense. They are reminding people of the results of the most recent American presidential elections. Something's fishy, something stinks, and they've come in opstand, protest, resistance marches, violence, riots, you name it. There are big dramas in Brazil over what is perceived to be the theft of the Brazilian presidential election. That part of the elections pertaining to the president, who would be the president. Next, the assault upon Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, by one David DePape, who has in the past been arrested multiple times for prostitution, male prostitution, obviously. But it's not illegal to have homosexual relations in the USA, so the illegal part was the prostitution. Homosexual relations, for money. The Pelosis are refusing to hand over CCTV footage. This happened last Saturday, I believe. DePape claims that the altercation was over drugs. Two gays bashing one another over drugs, by the sounds of things. And of course, before these statements were made, before this information came out, the Liberals, immediately after the event, jumped on the whole thing, jumped on the bandwagon, and were saying, this is the product of our toxic political environment. This is what MAGA makes people do. This is what has come out of Donald Trump's presidency. Meanwhile, it turns out that a Democratic congresswoman's husband, in other words, a liberal, is having gay sex and a punch-up over drugs. In other news, a military-style armed robbery of the Samsung shop in Fourways by 12 armed robbers on Saturday, the 29th of October, last Saturday, and the taking of 12 million rands worth of cameras. Cameras. There is no mention of phones or other Samsung products. Has led some to speculate that it may be an exercise similar to the very suspicious robberies that occurred prior to and during the Durban riots of last year between the 8th and the 8th and the 14th? The 8th and the 14th of July, when in some of the robberies, in that whole big picture, there was an apparent focus upon survivalist or militia type hunting, fishing, hiking, sleeping baggy, camping type equipment, leading some top security experts to speculate that the only possible reason for focusing upon stealing such items would be if you were endeavoring to stockpile or hoard or accumulate the logistical material required for, for a military type adventure or operation or project, if you like. And we don't know, but 12 million rands worth of cameras, but no phones, no nothing. Sounds like somebody is very serious about taking top quality photographs for some or other purpose. The most recent in a series of reports and leaks that KwaZulu-Natal coastal beaches have among the most elevated E. coli levels in the world has led to a bit of a storm in a teacup. And I say a storm in a teacup not to be facetious about those people who are endeavoring to draw attention to this matter and to address the matter. I say it because they're the only ones who appear to care. It has been reported on News 24 and in other forums and a lot on social media, but we're not hearing anything from the government. And of course, the city of Durban is practically stum on the matter. This is reminiscent of the carte blanche episode of a couple of months ago, in which they revealed that there are such and such number of pumping stations, clean water pumping stations around Durban, and the majority of them, I think 23 out of 33 or 21 out of 33, something like that, were simply not functioning, so on and so forth. So it is becoming rapidly apparent that the water, the potable water, the clean water, and the sewerage infrastructure around Durban is in a very, very bad way. And I put it to you as a born and bred Durbanite. I was born and bred on the upper south coast of Natal, just north of Amanzimtoti. So our local city was Durban. In those days, Amanzimtoti didn't have all that much. It had a Checkers and a hub. You remember the hub shops, and some banks and a railway station and some doctors, a mechanic and so on. And that was it. You didn't get to, there were no restaurants. I remember I was a teenager before the very first restaurant was opened in Amanzimtoti. Restaurant other than, let's say, at a country club or something like that. And so as a Durbanite, I can tell you, having subsequently lived in Johannesburg and Cape Town and other places, what might be the very, very great threat in Durban is not that it is the biggest city in Africa or even South Africa, but that the people occupy a relatively small space. If you look from a satellite photograph, Google Earth, down on Durban, and you zoom in and out a little bit and check the different places, Mlazi and KwaMakuta and KwaMashu and so on, you will see that there are many people in a very, very small space. Unlike, and I'm no expert, but unlike Johannesburg and surrounds, where if you drive 15 kilometers in one direction, you see cows grazing. You know, it's not city anymore. There's a bit of farmland. There's farmland on the road to Pretoria. Lots of it on both the left and the right hand side. And you don't have to drive very far down Witkoppen, for example, to pick up open plots and farmland and so on. So my point is just if there was to be an outbreak of illness due to poor sewerage and poor freshwater reticulation and services, it is perhaps the city in South Africa that would suffer the most in the shortest span of time. Just a thought. Over the past 2 weeks, there have been multiple fires at oil refineries, particularly in the USA. Let's not dwell on this subject, guys. We've spoken about it 100 times. Clearly, it is beyond the realms of possibility that it is accidental, that so many food processing plants, fertilizer manufactories, and oil refineries have become destroyed or have been destroyed one way or another, by one means or another, over the past couple of years. And it was just interesting to see people reporting in the USA in a bit of a panic in this week over how there were at least 3 oil refineries that caught fire over the previous week. A lot of semi-normies, a lot of people who are not as conservative as you and I are, who are really quite mainstream, seem to be waking up to the mathematics of what's going on in the world. Never mind anything else. They don't share our beliefs, but they're starting to appreciate that this just doesn't make sense anymore. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle over the latest batch of oil refinery arson in the USA. The Komati power plant was shut down this week as it reached the end of its lifespan. According to 2 different pieces of research that I did, it either began operating in 1961 or 1966. So it was either 61 or 56 years old. And as I commented to somebody, Suidlanders would read that article differently than the writer intended it to be written. The writer intends to say, well, it's perfectly normal, we've got to shut these things down, and after all, we're moving to green energy and blah, 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 saving the planet. Anthropogenic global warming, man-made global warming. Anthropo, from man, genic, creation. So man, global warming caused by man. Suidlanders, of course, would read it as, isn't it just a most peculiar coincidence upon coincidences that yet another coal-fired, reliable, dependable workhorse of electricity in the world has been shut down in this most critical of times. Never mind that it was at the end of its lifespan, apparently. Isn't it just a marvelous coincidence how all of these coincidences are coalescing at once? K.W. Miller and his 3 videos. Isn't he the business on social media? The American specialist in turnaround programs to rescue failed states and turnaround programs to rescue, these are the 2 things that he apparently specializes in, to rescue and turn around power generation, power utilities. He has been in South Africa and he's made an assessment. Apparently he's been working here, or he has been visiting here. He's been assessing the situation for quite some time. And the gist of his assessment, as he has put out in 3 videos, it's no longer 1, it's no longer 2, it's now 3 as of this morning or yesterday evening, is that Eskom is the worst run power generator, electricity provider, utility in the world, and that it would take between 1.1 and 1.7 trillion rand over and above whatever, I'm going to choose my words carefully here so that I don't misrepresent what he said, whatever other capital expenditure and running costs may be figured into the equation already. So over and above any other capital requirements known by the rest of us, or that the rest of us can read up on, or that we might have heard somebody mention, Andre de Ruyter, or what's his name, Jan Oberholzer, the Chief Operating Officer, or the Minister of Minerals and Energy Affairs. Whatever they might have said, he's saying, he's insisting, you need at least 1.1 trillion rand more than what they've said they can take care of with such and such money. So we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the next thing. He's saying by the time you've factored all of that, you're still 1.1 trillion rand at least short to do what really needs to be done to fix this situation. Russia claims that British forces perpetrated the sabotages of Nord Stream pipelines, Nord Streams 1 and 2, in September. And I have to tell you that it seems to be more than just an empty claim, because there has been very little pushback. And I learned today that apparently the British ambassador to Russia was called in to the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs building, a very, very impressive, marvelous structure. I didn't know about it as such a stupendous edifice, a Soviet edifice, but she was called in there and given a proper dressing down. And I gather that there's a leak, Chinese whispers leak, that they said to her, don't even think of denying it. If you take us for fools, here, to our faces, in spite of the evidence, watch what we do to you. So they presented their evidence apparently, nobody knows what it is, and they sent her packing with her tail between her legs. So it appears as if merely the tacit acceptance of that dressing down, of that chastising of the British ambassador to Russia is suggestive that where there's smoke, there's fire. What's more, it gets worse. British Prime Minister Liz Truss, we learned this week, through a leak in the Apple iPhone operating system. I'm probably using the incorrect nomenclature. I don't know the correct terms, but Apple iPhone something, somebody hacked it, took a good look at Liz Truss's recent communications, and then divulged that immediately after the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, allegedly by British agents, presumably the special boat services. You know, the British have the special boat services, special air services. The special air services are far more famous, but presumably they used the special boat services. Presumably they didn't call in the Boy Scouts or the Red Cross Children's Hospital or the artillery regiment, the boat duties, the undersea duties. Presumably they did it. Minutes after they did it, Liz Truss sent a message to the United States Secretary of State, that is to say Minister of Foreign Affairs, Antony Blinken, saying just 2 words: it's done. It's done. Stinks. The Atlantic magazine featured an article this week entitled "Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty." And the gist of the article, written by a professor, a woman professor, who, just to take a step back, who apparently was stridently pro-vaccination, number one, and number two, stridently anti any dispute. Anybody who said anything slightly against the vaccination, she was ferocious. Well, she's written an article saying, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let's not be nasty anymore. Of course, social media is going crazy with people saying, that poor woman, it's going to take a long time before she lives that one down. And I think that the Atlantic magazine has made a very great miscalculation of what is the public mood about this. The Atlantic is very much, it's an American magazine, I should have said that in the beginning. It is a left-wing, elitist magazine. It's the sort of magazine that wealthy, snooty, superior, sanctimonious, self-righteous, self-loving elites, really, I mean this, people in the USA, people who live in Martha's Vineyard and places like that they read. So they probably thought it was safe to communicate with those people in that way, saying, hey, don't be nasty anymore. Don't be nasty. But where they miscalculated is that something like 20 to 40% of the United States has not taken the vaccination. Any, not even one dose. Now, that's not the official figure. The official figure is roughly 20%. But I've been doing some research among Suidlanders, many very devoted friends, some of whom are exceedingly competent, capable people. You would be astonished to know the brain power of some of the people in the USA who love us very much. And they reckon to me that there's no ways that it's 1 in 5 people who have not taken the vaccination. They all suggest closer to 40%. Now, what the mistake that the Atlantic magazine has done is not to say, hey, you 10% over there, don't be nasty to me just because you lost your job and I encouraged people to be nasty to you, and because your children didn't get an education and you weren't allowed to step outdoors and you suffered a mental breakdown. Don't be ugly to me now that the evidence is all on your side. What they've done is make that very self-righteous assertion to 4/10 of the people. Let's say 1 in 3, 30%, 33% of the people in the USA. So there's a large number of people, a silent, not a majority, obviously 30%, 20%, 40% is a minority, but in a sense, in as much as the scam of the pandemic and the lethality of the vaccination have created some homogeneity and some unity and some common identity between people, that is, as a block, a majority. There's probably no other block in the USA that is 33 or 40% of the people. You might argue, yeah, but when the Republicans win an election of with 52%, well, that's half the people that are all Republican in that moment. No, it's not. It's half of the voters that are all Republican in that moment. Whereas here, we're talking about a whole different demographic. But even if I'm wrong by 1% or 2%, the fact remains that people in the USA are going berserk over the notion that the Atlantic would dare to say, hey, I've spent 2 years destroying your life. I, Professor S. Righteous. But don't you think you shouldn't do the same to me? It's a very big thing. We've previously spoken about the arrival of the United States 101st Airborne Division in Romania, haven't we, ladies and gentlemen? Just 30 kilometers or 30 miles, I forget which, from the Ukraine border. Well, now we're hearing about teams of United States weapons detectives operating brazenly in Ukraine. In other words, the USA has now sent in formal teams to track down the massive proportion of weapons that it has donated to Ukraine that has disappeared. The estimates vary. I was listening to or watching Colonel Dutoy's, one of his recent morning videos, and he had a figure and I had 2 other figures. So it's somewhere between 30% and 70% of all of the weapons, the arms and ammunition that have been donated to Ukraine by the United States of America. Let's say, for the sake of an easy number, half, or about half, or almost half, or a little bit more than half. Somewhere between 30 and 70%. Biker gangs in Finland are selling them on the dark net, the dark web, the deep web, whatever you call it. Apparently these things are proliferating all over Europe. And so the United States has sent teams to om daai wapens op te spoor. But there is already evidence on social media that some of those United States weapons detectives are in fact not that at all, they are trainers. It's not good. It's not good at all. There have been photographs of some of those new guys training Ukrainians on certain man-portable weapons, handheld rocket launchers, anti-tank guided missiles, anti-air defense or air defense, and so on. Dmitry Medvedev has issued another threat, as if the things that he has said in recent months are not dramatic enough. He has now come out with this on Tuesday, the 1st of November. He said that Ukraine's liberation of its territories is a direct reason for Russia to use nuclear weapons. The well-known thesis of Western countries is Russia cannot be allowed to win the war. But what does this really mean? Follow simple logic, he says. If Russia does not win, then obviously Ukraine will. Ukraine's goal in the war has been stated by the Kyiv regime to take back all the territory that previously belonged to it. That is, to tear them away from Russia. This is a threat to the existence of our state, and it would mean the disintegration of present-day Russia. And that means it is a direct reason, just hold on, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to click something here so that I can see time. And that would be and that means it is a direct reason for the application of Clause 19 of the basic principles of the state policy of the Russian Federation on nuclear deterrence. Now, I'm not going to read every word of all of these entire reports to you, but it goes on to imply quite simply and quite clearly that in the eyes of the Russians, that means we can go nuclear on you. Big news, guys. Big news. They're saying it explicitly now. Pick and Pay is allowing payments by cryptocurrency. That's right. Pick and Pay has offered to the New World Order to be the Trojan horse for bringing into our society, for the purposes of everyday transactions, non-physical currency, which is, of course, itself a Trojan horse for central bank digital currencies. And I read today that since these reports from earlier in the week, some people, including journalists, have indeed done transactions with cryptocurrency. They went into the shop and they bought. I don't know exactly how it works, but there you go. Now, what about Kusile? We're getting towards the end of this. Kusile, the 161 billion rand white elephant. What has happened to our brand new power station, which, by the way, when I say it's brand new, it's not even complete yet. Wednesday said that, I beg your pardon, on Wednesday, Eskom said that the flue gas duct at Unit 1 of the Mpumalanga power station failed in 2 places on 23rd of October. But most of this, as far as I know, only came out the day before yesterday. How they kept it secret for so long, I don't know. But nevertheless, this was reported the day before yesterday, and I got social media stuff from Suidlanders just the day before yesterday. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? All we know is this brand new thing is already failing. And I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that these failures that we're seeing in so many things are beyond the realm of accident. And that you are naive if you believe that they could all be coincidental in the sense, coincidence in the sense of accident. Julie Powell of Julie and Julia fame has died. Julie Powell was an American food writer who was famous for a movie about her attempt to reproduce every dish, every recipe of Julia Childs. Julia Child. Yeah, of Julia Child. Julia Child was a very famous American woman who spent some time in France many years ago, perhaps 80 or 70 or 90. Not 90, but a long time ago, spent some time in France, came back to America and wrote an autobiography called My Time in France, or My Life in France. And she went on to become very famous cookery personality. That's Julia Child. And this lady, Julie Powell, emulated her. She tried to reproduce all of the cooking that Julia Child did. Now, what is the relevance to Suidlanders here in South Africa? Well, you'll be interested to know that Julie Powell famously said that she hopes that vaccinated people die. She has, very sadly, died too soon at the age of just 49, having taken her vaccinations, received her vaccinations and her boosters. Oh dear me, guys. Pakistan, our last serious item for today. Guys, Imran Khan, the famous cricketer, was the Prime Minister of Pakistan up until a few months ago. He was then deposed in a bloodless coup. He famously went against a lot of the demands of the New World Order. He was opposed to Pakistan bending the knee to every whim of the United Nations and the United States and NATO and the coalition of the willing and you name it. He was generally opposed to globalists dictating Pakistani health policy and Pakistani financial and economic and commercial policy. Lo and behold, surprise, surprise, he gets deposed. Since then, he has been leading a campaign to discover support for a position that he believes is 100% right. In other words, he's been going around saying to people, hey, do you support me? Did you think that that was right? Well, if you don't think that it was right and you want to support me, come on, we can do something about this. Very peaceful and what have you. A few days ago, he was shot in the leg in his car in a convoy, of these demonstrators, of these people who support him, of these Pakistani nationalists, of these Pakistani patriots, of the anti-globalist Pakistanis that want justice for him being deposed. And he was shot, by the police. And since then, Pakistan has erupted. It has absolutely erupted. Hundreds of thousands of people are going berserk. There are violent riots even today. I might be able to, I might not, but I might be able to read to you a couple of comments that have been sent to us by a Suidlander in Pakistan. He is an Australian who works in Pakistan, and he is a great supporter of ours, and this is what he has to say. Yesterday there was an assassination attempt on Imran Khan. 2 weeks ago the police murdered one of Pakistan's most popular TV presenters who was making an anti-corruption documentary. I have never seen people so angry. Imran Khan started a so-called long march from Lahore city to Islamabad, the capital. Around 1 million people are participating in the march. Police and military all over. I think the military are preparing to stage a coup. People are taking to the streets in large numbers now. This, by the way, is from 2 hours ago. Every 30 minutes I am seeing groups pass our office towards Islamabad, the capital. protesters have attacked the army HQ, and they are worried that the same will happen, that the protesters will attack the local army HQ in our city. A national strike was called from 2 p.m. Our office block manager is obeying the strike and only allowing people to leave. In other words, you can't come in to do work in this office block where our friend works. This all happened because Imran Khan made a trade deal with Russia in February. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to this very long episode of the Week in Review. And by the way, if it appears soon as in case you missed it, I think we might be playing a little bit with the title as we discover what we're doing and we work out how to do it as we go along. But we might be making some name changes to this. Nevertheless, thank you very much. I hope that this has been educational. I hope that it has been beneficial. And I wish all of you a blessed, restful weekend. Goodbye and God bless you.